And welcome to Bourbon Ballistics Podcast. I'm your host, Joel Potter. This is brought to you by First Line Ballistics. Today we have Jeff Herbert of ODM Defense. How are you, Jeff?
Hanging in there. Another day, another mind-boggling adventure.
Yeah, you've been busy.
Very busy.
Running ragged.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the norm.
Yeah, and we're glad we can get you on this Friday afternoon. And
I appreciate it.
We got some Brothers Bond to talk over today. It's a straight bourbon, hand-selected batch. Looks like it's coming from Silverton, Ohio. So I have not tried this before. I don't know if you have or not.
I have not, no.
So looks like the mash bill is 65 corn, 22% rye, a little bit of wheat in there for some bready flavor, I guess is how they describe it. So let's see get this poured up and let's get going. I guess while we're doing this, you want to just give yourself a quick introduction about you and your company.
Sure, yeah. So my name is Jeff Herbert. I'm the co-owner, founder of ODM Defense. We had a couple other business names early on because, the business is multifaceted. And over the last couple of years, we just determined it's better to rebrand it all under one name during tax time and paperwork and administrative. It's a lot easier running all that for one business name as opposed to four. So what our company does here in Carson Valley is we are a full service firearms retailer. We are an FFL. We manufacture custom handmade holsters on site here. We offer firearms training, everything from CCW, beginner, intermediate, advanced handgun and carbine, defensive shotgun. We do tactical medical classes. We do unarmed self-defense in our ODM combatives. It's rooted out of Jeet Kune Do, and it's a combination of many different martial arts styles that both myself and my business partner have developed and utilized over the years. We do Cerakote on site here. We do have an indoor simulator as well. Basically, if it has anything to do with the firearms industry, we have our fingers in it in one way, shape, or form. Combative stuff is fairly recent to us. My business partner, Corky Sponsi, he's our combatives instructor. He's been participating in martial arts since he was 9 years old. So he's been doing it for close to 40 years now. He recently retired from the Army, and once he moved out here, it's something that he's been developing. So we've only been working on that for about 2 to 3 months now. It's a very new thing, comparative to other stuff that we've been doing for many years now. So that's something that we're trying to get the word out and let people know that in this area, people are very familiar with like DC Jiu-Jitsu and Machado and Northwestern Martial Arts Academy, and what we offer is completely different. It's not a martial arts style per se. Easiest way to describe it is like street fight. So not just, when you look at when MMA first came about, started out with like tough man competitions and things like that, where you had, this guy's a jiu-jitsu practitioner and he's going up against a black belt. Or you have, this guy has a wrestling background and this guy's into Muay Thai, right? And you have these different styles that are kind of pitted against each other. When you have people that fight the same style, it's easy to defend certain moves. It's easy to defend certain things because you know what the other person is going to do when you're utilizing different types of styles. I've seen guys that are brown belts and black belts in a martial art that have gotten their asses handed to them by somebody who's never been in a fight in their entire life because they're fighting in a style that I don't want to say professional martial artist, but that experienced martial artist has never seen before. So they don't know how to defend. So what our combative system does, like I said, it's rooted out of Jeet Kune Do, which is what the system that Bruce Lee started.
All right.
That's what he invented. Right. So we implement some Salat, some Filipino martial arts. Corky was also back in our battalion where he and I first met. He was our McMap instructor, Marine Corps Martial Arts Program instructor. So he actually taught the instructor. So he's what we call instructor trainer. And then he was one of our battalion instructors. So very, very well-versed and very experienced in the hand-to-hand and self-defense realm. So that's why it's kind of his baby. He's taking that and running with it. And we're trying to get that going. We did a free seminar. It was an anti-abduction seminar at the Douglas County Community Center a couple of weeks ago, and we're planning on doing some more of that, offering some of those free seminars to the public, just because in today's world, as we all see, turn on the news every day, look around. I mean, it's a dangerous place. Outside of my company, I'm a project manager for a private security firm, and we're extremely busy in that as well, because not just what we normally do on the security side, but now we're having an increased demand for private security.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been doing a lot of stuff for the Jewish community in Reno. Some people, hostile terminations have seen an increase. So we're, going to office buildings and people's homes, and things like that, because of just this heightened just sense of danger that's in the world.
Mm-hmm.
We're in unprecedented times as far as that goes. And that's why we feel that any type of self-defense is extremely important. Mm-hmm. So with CCW training and firearms training, that's all well and good, but you may not always have a gun, or maybe you don't own a gun, or you don't want a gun. Maybe you're not a gun person, you don't want to shoot. You still need to be able to defend yourself. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have that capacity for violence, you don't have the ability to protect yourself, whether armed or unarmed, you're just making yourself a victim. One of the biggest parts of getting a business name out there is marketing, but that also requires a budget.
Correct.
And as most small upstarts know, and as you well know, the marketing side could be quite the challenge. So right now we're just, pretty much social media is our only means of marketing at the moment. So being able to go to the community center and get the word out, it'll help. But we did have a small turnout, got a very positive response from it. So that's why we're looking forward to, and we also, when we scheduled it, we didn't have a lot of time for build up. I think we only had, from the time we scheduled it to the time we actually put it on, maybe 7 to 10 days.
Okay.
So that's hard to get the word out, and for something like that, people need to schedule their time. Mm-hmm. And it's a busy time of year with the holidays coming up and everything else. So can't expect too much.
Did you have a pretty wide range of, as far as ages and genders and music?
So pretty much we just had males in this one. The thing with this anti-abduction seminar with that is it was geared predominantly for kids. Mm-hmm. So, we had some of the parents that would maybe drop their kid off in there and then go do something else in the center, or whatever the case may be. We had a couple of the parents that stuck around for it. And it's great because, number one, there's just so many aspects of situational awareness that a lot of kids don't really know about. And it's not anybody's fault. It's just a matter of, we don't want to, I have 2 small kids of my own, and I don't want to have to sit there and take the magic away from my kids. Mm-hmm. I want them to be kids and be innocent as long as they can. But unfortunately, in this world, can't really afford that. And that's my dad's job. When he asked my 6-year-old, what's daddy's job? She says, to protect me. So she knows. But there's going to be a time where I may not. Right. And so with these types of seminars, it's great for the kids. We're working on some, one thing we're discussing on doing, which one of our partners, which is Cornerstone Martial Arts up in Northern Reno, we're looking at putting on some realtor safety seminars.
Oh.
So you think of a lot of the realtors, in our area, maybe not so much, but you get into cars or into Reno, or, say you're showing a house out in the middle of nowhere in Silver Springs, something like that. You have a lot of women that are out there that are real estate agents and things like that, going out on their own, going into unknowns with clients maybe they've never met before. So the realtor safety aspect is, situational awareness, how to get out of certain scenarios, how to set yourself up for success and things like that. So a lot of the informational seminars and things like that we can put on for the community, we're looking at doing.
And then your CCW classes, you guys have been really busy with that as well.
CCW is always one of those things that there's always a demand for it, whether it be for initials or renewals. And as you well know, in this area, we have a large intake of people moving in, people coming from other states that maybe was very difficult to obtain a CCW permit, or maybe they just have never really owned a firearm before, and coming out to an area where we've got bears, we've got cats, we've got coyotes, things like that. So people start looking at their, not only protection of self, but protection of property a little bit different than they maybe had before.
Mm-hmm.
So what we try to do on our CCWs is we offer 3 a month, whereas a lot of places maybe do 1 or 2. We try to do at least 1 on a Saturday, 1 on a Sunday, and 1 on a Tuesday, or at least some point during the week. That way, it gives everybody an opportunity. You know, some people work on the weekends;
Mm-hmm.
they don't want to take time off or can't take time. Or if they're avid church attendees, they don't want to go to a class on a Sunday because they have their Sunday obligations that they want to adhere to. Same thing for somebody's working Saturday. Sunday's the only day, whatever. So we like to keep it flexible for that. And then we also offer one-on-one training for that. We don't charge extra. You know, it's like I ethically, I don't feel right charging somebody additional to receive the same information that everybody else is.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have somebody says, hey man, my only day off is a Thursday. Okay, well, let's coordinate that. Let's work around it. Let's find a way to make this work for you so it works for your schedule. And we're not going to deem you extra for that because it just makes no sense. My personal.
Yeah, I've actually had the opportunity to go out and watch a few of your classes, and they're a lot different than some of the other ones I've witnessed, sat in on. A lot more physical demands for making sure that you're able to, you know, like when you have them out there moving when they're winded and still trying to, you know, get on target and all that stuff. I mean, I thought that was pretty neat and very viable. I mean, and for training purposes, you know, it is a real life situation where you're probably not going to be completely calm while you're, you know, squeezing the trigger and being able to, you know, come up on target. So I thought that was kind of neat. And like I said, it seems like your classes are a little bit more evolved, you know, as far as instructors are concerned.
The way we look at it is there's a couple things. I mean, you can go, anybody can say, oh, I learned how to do that. I went and saw these YouTube videos. And you got, you know, the students or instructors that go that route. Both my partner and I both have reward experience. We're both, you know, my partner was Marine Corps and Army. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. We're both, you know, he and I went to combat together. We were part of the invasion back in 2003. And I served the better part of 2003, 2004, and 2005, all spent overseas. So a lot of what we bring into our classes is all real world experience, things that we've seen in real life that work. And unfortunately, on the sad part of it, we've seen things that don't work. Mm-hmm. So we know what not to be teaching people, or there's certain things that you see that instructors are doing that are just completely unsafe, or you're going to get people hurt. One of the biggest things that we don't do is we don't do anything for we don't do any what we call range theatrics. And, you know, like you said, you've been witnessed and participated in some of the stuff, sure, drills and things that we do. And what I mean by range theatrics is, you know, doing it for the gram, right? Something that looks cool on camera. Oh, this is a real cool thing, or it seems real slick, but in actual practice, it's going to get you hurt or killed. Mm-hmm. Why do in 5 movements what you can do in 3? You know, economy of motion and things like that. Because in those types of self-defense scenarios, time is life. And if you take too much time to do something, it's going to end up not working out in your favor. And with doing that induced stress, that stress inoculation, we try to do what we can to mimic what your body's auto stress response is going to be. You know, involuntary shaking, heavy breathing, sweating, difficulty concentrating, what I refer to as environmental distractions. So in, say, an active shooter scenario, an environmental distraction would be the smell of burnt cordite in the air, blood on the ground, people screaming, people running into you, people running into the threat, decreased visibility depending how much smoke's in the air, maybe a fire was lit, whatever the case may be. And you have to be able to work through these things to be able to put accurate shots on the target. Mm. So by going out and forcing people to run a little bit, lift some kettlebells. One thing we've developed recently is doing, I don't want to say shadow boxing, but you know, you have some people that maybe can't run if they're an older student or something, like they get bad knees or whatever. They can't sprint 40 yards carrying 225-pound weights. So what can we do to still get that heart rate going, get the blood pumping, get the sweat? And one thing in our area that is fantastic that a lot of people don't realize is, we've got all this BLM land around us, which is great to be able to go out and do what you want to do. But we live in an area where when our winter hits, it's cold. Mm-hmm. Yeah, snow on the ground, it's windy. Um, how your body responds to cold is the same in many ways how your body responds to stress. You're going to lose fine motor skills because you can't feel your fingers, you can't feel your hands. That's going to happen under stress. That's going to happen under cold. Environmental distractions, whereas in an active shooter, like I said, blood, cordite, screaming, all this other stuff. Well, when you're out on BLM land in the middle of 25 degrees and it's snowing on you, you've got snow, you've got wind. What happens to metal and plastic when it gets into a freezing environment? Well, it contracts. Mm-hmm. Your lubrication on your firearm is not going to function same way it does on an 80-degree range day. So you're going to start having force malfunctions on your pistol. So you're going to have to learn how to work through those malfunctions. If you're doing reloads, you're dropping magazines in the snow and in the mud, and then probably not wiping them off properly when you insert them into the pistol. So you're going to have malfunctions there. Your followers could get dumped up. So it's a tremendous opportunity to get out and get some realistic training, even though it sucks because it's cold, it's miserable. You don't want to be out there, but that's a phenomenal training tool that we have at our disposal in our neck of the woods that other places in this country don't have, at their disposal. So I always emphasize as soon as you get an opportunity to go out and train when it's cold, go out and do it. It's going to suck. You don't have to spend all day out there. Just, I like to go out in just a light jacket and a hat, no beanie, no gloves, no nothing, and just go shoot for about a half hour. Let yourself get really uncomfortable and then start running some drills.
And do you, in the middle of summer on the opposite end of the spectrum, right? The extreme heat and the dry air. I mean, do you think there's any benefit to going out and doing that as well? I mean, does the body react the same way in the heat as it would in the cold? I mean, do you have some of the same?
Not necessarily, because things like losing fine motor skills and getting numb and things like that aren't going to happen in the heat. But what you're going to have in the heat that you don't have the cold is a lot of sweat. Mm-hmm. So you're dealing with slick hands, you're dealing with sweat running into your eyes. You're going to have those type of distractions. Your firearm's going to function a little bit differently in the heat than it is in the cold. A lot of times in the heat, depending on where you're training, if you're out running around and things like that, then you've got dirt getting kicked up. So you got dust in your face, you've got dirt getting into your firearm. So there's a lot of benefits to training in the heat as well. It's you're going to get exhausted than you would normally. Same thing in the cold when you have that involuntary shaking in the cold. That's gonna. A lot of people don't really. Why do you think that after a day out in the cold, when you get home, you're just wiped out? Well, it's because your body is twitching and moving. You subconsciously, you don't even realize it's happening, but your muscles are in constant use. Same thing out in the heat. So as you're running around out in the heat, and then of course, are you hydrated? So are you going to cramp? Are you going to have muscle fatigue and things like that because you're not hydrating when you're out training? So it does have its benefits as well. It's just the physiological response of what your body's going to go through is going to be different, but at the same time, bad guys don't always wait for perfect.
Right.
So you gotta be able to go out and train regardless of what those
conditions. Once you acquire a CCW, and I think there might be some rule somewhere, but what do you think you should be doing a week? As far as practice. I mean, dry firing, practicing drawing and stuff like that. I mean, how many to your students? What do you normally suggest once they've gotten their CCW?
Once they get their CCW, of course, you want to get some live firing here and there. I don't, some people say I go out and run a box a week. Okay, that's great, but ammo ain't cheap, nor is it, especially right now and during certain times, every couple of years or so, especially during election cycles. Ammo can be very difficult to come by. So dry fire, like you mentioned, dry fire is fantastic. That's the best way to improve your accuracy, your speed, your fundamentals. And the best thing about dry fire is it's free. You do it in the privacy of your own home. I always tell my students, if you want dry fire drills, call me, text me, send me an email, whatever. I'm happy to give some dry fire drills for that. Practicing your draw strokes is very important because maybe you can stack 5 rounds on a quarter at 10 yards, but it takes you 7 seconds to get your gun in the fight. A lot of people are familiar with the 21 foot rule, right? That a person can close the gap 21 feet before you can get your gun out of an open carry holster and fight. The average time that it takes to do that is 1.5 seconds for someone to close. An average person to close 20. The average draw time for what I call a non-practitioner, someone who doesn't dry fire, they don't practice, is 2.5 to 3 seconds. So you're already a second half behind the power curve. The other aspect of that is how long do you think it's going to take for you to recognize, realize you're being attacked?
Mm-hmm.
At least another second. So now you have 0.5 second response time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just ain't gonna happen. So that's why dry fire is important. Learning to get your gun into the fight, having a good quality holster that you can get your gun into the fight quickly, you know is going to perform. When you go to draw, that whole unit isn't coming off your belt, and you go to extend out, and then your gun's wrapped in plastic or leather or whatever the case may be. Because now you have another roadblock that you got to get through in order to stay in the fight.
Mm-hmm.
Then it takes your focus off the attacker, and you're focusing on the fact that your gun still has a holster back, and now you're not paying attention.
And if we're looking for quality holsters, where do we go, Jeff?
That would be coming to us.
Yeah.
So we do manufacture custom holsters. We have several different molds for a lot of the more popular platforms. You know, your Glocks, your M&Ps, things like that. If it's what we call a one-off, you know, something where maybe it's not a common firearm that a lot of people have, we may ask you to bring it in, and we'll actually mold the holster directly to your firearm. We work with thermoplastic, which most people just refer to as Kydex. Kydex is a manufacturer, but you know, don't deal with leather or some of the other materials. And the reason we go towards the Kydex is mainly, number one, it's easy to work with, and you can form it to whatever you want. If you make a mistake, you just pop it back in the oven, it flattens back out, and then you can rework it. But the biggest thing is for the actual, when you're carrying your firearm. One thing that I've seen over the years, and seeing people in training classes and different CCW classes that are utilizing, say, maybe leather or neoprene or nylon or Cordura, some of these other softer sided materials, what happens once you draw is that holster collapses on itself.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have to reholster, you don't have a clear pathway to secure that firearm. And what we see a lot of people doing is trying to use the muzzle of the firearm to open up the holster to be able to reholster that gun. And think about what's going to be happening if you had to draw your firearm and then now you're reholstering it. Either A, you almost had to use it, or B, you did have to use it. So think of that like adrenaline dump and what your brain's going through, what your body's going through. We talk about that involuntary shaking. You get a lot of people that have a lot of trigger time, that train a lot, that still, after a stressful event, don't remember to take that finger off the trigger, right? So now you're using the muzzle of the firearm, digging at this holster with your finger on the trigger while you're involuntarily shaking. And the worst thing you could possibly do is to survive a gunfight, and then in the aftermath, put a hole in yourself.
Bleed out or something.
Yeah, by trying
right.
by trying to reholster your firearm after you just successfully defended yourself or those around you. So that's why I prefer Kydex personally. All of my gear has always been hard shelled gear. Never been a fan of the soft shell gear, both in mag carriers and pretty much anything. Just it's more durable. It's less likely to rip or tear or break. So we have the ability to make just about anything, from magazine carriers, holsters. I've done insulin pump holders for people, EpiPen holders for people go hiking and stuff like that. We make it like a nice bright color. That way, if you're hiking on your own and say you get stung by a bee and you're going into anaphylactic shock on the trail, somebody comes along, they see this bright thing that's on your belt, like, oh, that's an EpiPen. We need to jab this individual.
Yeah.
So things like that. Tourniquet holders, flashlight carriers, all those different types of things. If I can wrap plastic around it, I'll figure out a way to do it.
Good. How long you been in the holster business?
Maybe about 6 or 7 years now. I keep, I still have that 2-year COVID blackout where I keep saying, a couple of years ago. Well, a couple of years is, 5 years ago now at this point. But yeah, it's been about 7 years. Started out as Battleborn holsters. Some people may be familiar with that name. Bought the company from an individual here locally that just decided he didn't want to do it anymore. When I got into it, I'd never touched Kydex in my life.
I was going to ask that.
Yeah, I'd never done it, and just said, hey, here's a good opportunity. Let me see what I can do. And took me about 6 months of playing around in the garage and making things for myself just to see what worked and what didn't, try to get my processes down. And took about 6 months until I finally came up with a product that I felt comfortable charging money for.
Nice.
And then, like I said, it's been 7 years now and I'm still learning.
Is the product itself, I mean, has there been any changes in like the molecular, or I mean, are we still using the same material that you first started building holsters with?
If I tried to get into the weeds with you on that, I would be doing you a disservice because I don't know, to be honest. I want to say, at least in the time that I've been doing it, there really hasn't been any changes as far as the construction of the material itself, the plastic itself. They've done some different things in the ways of doing patterns and colors and things like that on it, pigmentation. There's companies now that do sublimation. You can have dang near anything you want sublimated and printed on Kydex and made into a holster. There's Bolteron is one of the companies that their specialty is making their Kydex look like carbon fiber. It's not painted on or anything. It's actually, I don't know if it's embossed in a press or if they do like a quick laser etch over it or whatever, but it's actually textured. You can feel it. It
like the weave.
Yep.
Oh, neat.
Yeah. They do have basket weave Kydex as well. So there's a lot of different material looks. They have some that's like faux leather looking, the texture. They just recently, it's been about 2 years now. One company does a clear Kydex. So like you can actually do a holster that's completely clear. So there's been a lot of changes as far as that goes. There's fabric wrapped Kydex. So if you wanted like, a certain camo pattern or something like that, where they actually adhere a thin fabric, there's a faux suede material that you can get, velvet. There's all kinds of stuff. So it's the only limitations really are, what you got in your wallet as far as, because the more elaborate you get on the material or the thicker the material, I guess, and of course the higher cost it's going to be. The other thing that we do see with the material is it is a petroleum-based product. So as we see gas prices and oil prices fluctuate, so does the cost of a sheet of Kydex. Where when I first got into it, a 2x4 sheet of a 0.08 thickness, plain black, your run-of-the-mill standard Kydex sheet was, I want to say maybe $24, and now that's more than doubled for the exact same material. So that then of course has to get reflected in our prices on products.
And we're just as understanding of that as anybody. I mean, the cost of steel when we first set out on this project was probably about half of what it is now. And it's unfortunate because there's a lot of people that are still, I mean, I don't know how they're getting away with it, but they're being able to squeak out a lot less for inferior product. Don't get me wrong, but if you're looking for just a steel plate to shoot at, it's just you're pumping up your volume, and I think that probably the same with any material, right? But yeah, it's definitely a change in times for a business owner, especially when you're in manufacturing.
And the hard part with that is as the material prices increase, your margins lessen, and especially if you want to still maintain a good price for your customers. But on the flip side of that is with the economy the way it is, people just don't have that discretionary income that they had a few years ago. So not only is it more expensive for you to make your product, but now people don't have those extra funds available to purchase the product that you're making.
That's exactly right.
And that's that unfortunate endless loop that we're in right now.
Mm-hmm. And you're one of the first businesses to actually pick up First Line. And so I figured it was a good opportunity for us to come in here and get to know you, your company, your products and services, and kind of set out why you are so much different in the industries, your respective industries that you're in. Like I said, the training and stuff like that, it's a lot different than anything I'd seen before. As far as the involvement with you and the drills that you're running, it's not just, pick your distances and shoot and you're qualified. There's a lot more to it than that. And then coming in with your, I've watched you, on the holster side of things. I mean, the amount of time and effort you're putting into each one of those, you're definitely doing a good job keeping busy, and your work, it definitely reflects your work ethic.
Thank you. Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I think it's a good time for us to try on this Brothers Bond.
So we started getting all worded up there, and then forgot that there's this delicious
we should probably
water.
Try it. Cheers! Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
All right. So you have upcoming classes I saw on Instagram.
Yes.
You have some CCW stuff coming up.
Yeah, we've got some CCWs. We have one of our more popular training courses that we put on is something we call our EDC skills class. For those that don't know, EDC is everyday carry. So as I mentioned before, all well and good if you can stack a bunch of rounds on a quarter, but if you can't get your gun, into the fight, what good's it going to be to you? It's just 2.5 pounds of plastic and steel strapped to your side. So what the EDC skills class is it emphasizes fundamentals, of course, with any course that we do, whether it's beginner, intermediate, or advanced. We still hit the fundamentals early and hit them hard. But what the EDC skills class emphasizes is getting the gun into the fight. This is a class that when people show up, we don't want you in a battle belt. We don't want you running a drop leg. We don't want you running plate carriers. This is not a tactical class. I want you coming to this class with whatever your carry pistol is, however you carry a spare magazine. And for those of you out there that don't carry a spare magazine, you should. Absolutely. And there's a whole nother argument as to why that's important. But you need to have at least, one spare mag with you, your carry gun. And we go through how to get that gun into the fight, how to get it into the fight quick, and how to get a shot on target. Not just a shot off, but a shot on target quickly. Like our goal at the end of the day, we always have your enabling learning objectives and your terminal learning objectives, your ELOs, TLOs. Your TLO at the end of the day for that is you need to be able to get that gun out of the holster and have a shot on target in an A zone, which is a center mass hit in 2.5 seconds or less. That's our goal. So we, take people who maybe have never drawn from concealment and get you into that speed range to be able to where you can shoot quickly and effectively. Once we get you comfortable in drawing and engaging from concealment, then we're going to start amping it up. We bring in movement, engaging multiple threats. One of our favorite drills is we do a little bit of stress inoculation and then have you shoot from 3 different shooting positions, standing around the left side of a barricade, then dropping to the prone under the table, and then shooting from the kneeling around the right side of the barricade. And this is all while maintaining at least 50 to 60% of your body behind cover. Because again, when you look at competition shooters and things like that, IDPA, USPSA, when people are shooting for speed, they're going through these courses of fire, but a lot of times they're fully exposed. I'm not going to say that generates bad habits, because there's good and bad arguments to be had for how competition shooting translates into a real world scenario. Anybody who says competition shooting will get you killed out in the street they don't know what they're talking about. I don't care what discipline it is. Competition shooting is all speed, accuracy, being able to handle your firearm, conduct rapid reloads. There's so many skills in competition shooting that translate into defensive shooting. So the main difference between some of them is how and when you reload and whether or not you're utilizing covering concealment. So with the EDC skills class, it's utilizing your what we call a cover garment, which is, the whole point of carrying concealed is being concealed. So to get that gun in the fight, you need to make sure you can manipulate that garment, get it out of the way to get the gun in the fight. So, emphasizing that, how to conduct your reloads. We try to do some malfunction drills. A lot of malfunctions are hard to duplicate when you're on the range, but we can actually, if anything, we can go through the motions of clearing. We can just say, yell what type of stoppage it might be, a type 1, type 2, whatever the case, and then make sure the students are doing the proper remediation drill for that particular stoppage.
So your classes, it sounds like it's not just, I just got a gun, or I'm just getting ready to get a gun. You probably want to have some sort of comfort with your firearm before coming out there. I mean, Because it sounds like, I mean, people
For
that
that class, yeah.
yeah, it sounds like if it was just somebody that had just bought a firearm, it's going to be a little bit hectic, I think, trying to figure all that out.
Exactly. So we have prerequisites for certain classes.
Okay.
So like the EDC skills class, the prerequisite is that you have a CCW permit.
Mm-hmm.
So we know you've at least gone through some sort of rudimentary training and some sort of familiarity, hopefully, if your CCW instructor is doing what they're supposed to be doing, to where you can effectively manipulate that firearm.
Mm-hmm.
We do have our intro classes. Our level 1 class, you don't even go to the range. We utilize our simulator.
I was going to talk about that. Yeah.
The simulator pistols we utilize utilize green gas, so you do get the blowback effect of the slide coming back. You get a little bit of noise of the air popping when you're squeezing that trigger. So it helps you. For those who have never shot before, it's a good opportunity to get some sort of familiarity of how it's going to feel when you actually go shoot. It's obviously does not replicate what the actual firearm's going to do, but it's at least when you get out to the range and do a live fire for like a level 2 class, it's not going to just completely shock you at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good way to kind of ease somebody into it. So that's the way we stack our training is we do have, like I said, the beginner, intermediate, and advanced levels on the firearms classes. So if somebody, let's say we're going to do an advanced carbine class, which the thing with those advanced classes, that's going to be a ton of movement, running, reloads, muzzle awareness and safety is extremely important when doing those types of classes. You need to give me some sort of demonstrative proof that you've gone through some other training before that, whether through us, and we give certificates at the end of the day. Nice printed certificate with a little gold seal on it, and it's embossed and very nice.
Put it up on the wall.
So you put it on the wall to keepsake, and it's kind of nice.
That's cool
to have that. But at the same time, now you have proof that, hey, I took your class a year ago. Here's the class I took. Oh, okay, yeah, that's the certificate. Cool. You're eligible for this next class. But here's something that a lot of people don't realize, they don't think about. When you go take training somewhere, and if you're not receiving some sort of paper, a certificate, a sign-off, something, you're doing yourself a disservice, because let's say you are involved in a self-defense shoot. Every certificate that you have for every class you've taken could be admissible as evidence in court, and you can prove to the court that you are a responsible gun owner and a responsible shooter because you have taken follow-on training after the bare minimum of the CCW to maintain your proficiency. So that's something that can help you later on in the legal sense, later on down the road. If heaven forbid you do ever have to use a firearm for self-defense, you can say, look, see, I train, I practice. I'm not irresponsible with my gun ownership. I actually take it very seriously. So that's why we like to make sure that when somebody completes a course that we give them those certificates.
Yeah. How often do you see somebody goes out and they're new to guns and they go out and maybe they come with their own gun, or maybe they go get their CCW and then go buy a pistol. They do nothing else for 5 years, and then they'll come back and see you for research. Is that a pretty common occurrence, or do you not see a lot of that?
Way, way, way more common than I care to admit.
Yeah, that's
unfortunate. It's unfortunate. There's a large percentage of people, at least most students that come back, when I ask them, when's the last time you went out? Some of them like, I go out like maybe once, which is not enough, but at the same time, it's better than nothing.
Right.
But we do get, I would say on my renewals, maybe 20 to 25% of people that say the last time I shot was the last time I was in class.
Really?
And that's, I tend to do a little hand slapping with that, because my follow-up question to that, okay, you didn't get the range, how much dry fire have you done? If I have somebody that's like, hey man, I work graveyards and I sleep all day. I can't get to the range, but I dry fire an hour a week, or a couple hours every month. Okay, at least you're doing something. You're maintaining some sort of proficiency and working on perfecting your skills. Awesome. That's great. A little bit is better than nothing.
Yes, that is 100%.
And the hard part with dry fire, you look at, again, I've talked about competitive shooters previously. These guys will dedicate half hour, 2 hours, sometimes a day to just dry fire. Whereas the rest of us that work don't have sponsors to buy us all this, send us all this super high speed gear and everything. Don't have that opportunity. Like myself, I work multiple jobs. I have 2 kids, young children, and it's a handful. So any opportunity that we can get ourselves to get a couple dry fire reps in every day, it only takes a couple seconds. Like when I get up in the morning, when I put my holster on in the morning, I do, of course, unload your fire, make sure it's clear before you do any of this. I do 5 dry fire reps of drawing my firearm and extending out in front of the mirror every morning. 5 reps. And then at the end of the day, when I take my gun off, same thing, unload, show clear, make sure I'm good to go. I'll do 5 more. Throughout the day, anytime I have to take my pistol off for whatever reason, I do 1 rep when I take it off, and then I do 1 rep when I put it back on.
Oh, that's good.
So throughout the day, I'm getting anywhere from 10, 15, sometimes 20 reps in, and it's taking me literally 10 seconds.
Right.
And so you don't have to dedicate a big chunk of time to becoming more proficient. It's just a little bit here and a little bit there. The most important aspect of it is the consistency, because drawing a firearm is not like riding a bike. You and I, before we talked, before we started the podcast, we're talking about, playing instruments and how going back and picking up a guitar or a bass that you haven't played in a while is not like getting on a bike again. And even like getting on a bike, I use this example for students in class. Like, can I get on a mountain bike and go ride around my neighborhood? Yeah. Can I do it at the level I did when I was 16 years old and was riding 10 miles a day and crushing trails? Absolutely not. I would kill myself. So yeah, you can still get on and pedal, but it's not going to be pretty. And it's the same thing with that dry fire. Like, yeah, if you're not working on that stuff, if you do have to draw, let's say you haven't done any dry fire drills in months, and then you go to start getting into it again, you're going to notice you're fumbling. You're taking, it used to take me 1.5 seconds. Now it's taking me 2.5 seconds. And you're going to have to streamline that process.
And you had, going back to something you said earlier, you also did do still, I guess, competitive?
Yes. I try to, as long as the weekend permits. There's, unfortunately, with being an instructor, a lot of times the weekends that you do have available are the weekends that you have classes scheduled.
Yeah, it makes some money.
Yeah, it's like, well, do I go spend money in a match between the match fees and ammo and gas, or do I make some money and be in the classroom? The other side of that too is there could be a match happening when my kids are with me, and I'm not going to pay somebody for 3 or 4 hours to hang out with my kids when that's my time. So I won't go shoot on the weekends that I have my kids, because that's my time to be with my kids. So I don't get to shoot as often as I did. I used to compete once or twice a month. Now, I mean, I shot a local IDPA match maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, and that was the first match I'd shot in about a year. I did okay considering, not as well as I could have. But yeah, it's an eye opener if you do those types of things frequently, and then you get away from it for a while. Again, just like the whole riding the bike thing. Yeah, I can get in there and shoot, but it's not going to be what it could be. But yeah, I've been shooting competitively since 2012. I started out shooting IDPA in Texas. Shot some IDPA and USPSA when I lived in San Antonio, and moved here in 2014. Got involved with IDPA here, some USPSA, and multi-gun, which is my favorite. Yeah. So multi-gun's a lot of fun.
How many? I've never actually been to one of those matches to see how it works, but I mean, how many competitors or classes? I mean, how does it work?
So you have your classes, and then you have the skill sets within those classes. So let's say, for example, if you run a standard Glock, so you would be like in IDPA parlance, you would be an SSP shooter, which stands for stock service pistol.
Oh, okay.
So then you stack up against other people in that category, stock service pistol. And then from there you have unclassified, which are people that aren't members, that have never shot a classifier. Then you have novice. Then you have marksman, sharpshooter, and expert. So there's different levels. So when you compete, you're competing against the entire field. But when it comes down to, at the end of the day, when let's say the scores come out, there'll be an overall score, and then there'll be another score sheet that says, okay, in SSP expert, there were 3 people in that are classified as SSP experts. Here came first, second, third. Novice, there's 5 people. Here's the order that they came in. So they break it down that way as well. So you can see how you stack up against shooters that are kind of within your same skill set.
And that's, I was going to say too, because you could probably, with the classes, you could have somebody that just wants to waste their class and kind of sandbag. Mm-hmm. But if you have all the scores, you would still know that you're not, in your own mind, I guess, not performing to your standard that you should be.
Right.
That's kind of interesting.
So just like with anything that's classified that way, is you mentioned sandbaggers, and I kind of smiled there because there are the sandbaggers that are out there when you shoot a classifier, because they'll tell you at the match, like, hey, today one of the stages is a classifier. So if you want this classification to go to headquarters and go towards your classification, let us know ahead of time that we can mark it on your score sheet. Boom, they send it off. So you'll get people that'll sandbag a classifier. So like, oh, I'm only shooting marksman. But they're actually their skill set's far above that. But they'll sandbag the classifier so when they go to a match, they can keep taking first place in certain things because you're a marksman, but actually you shoot sharpshooter or expert, So it's one of those things where that does happen on occasion. Some matches, what they'll do is for whoever finishes first, they actually give you a bump, meaning they bump you into the next category.
Oh,
so they do that to kind of get away from the sandbagging. So if you sandbag, so you're classified as a marksman and you keep taking first, they bump you to sharpshooter.
Oh, really? Oh, that's good. That's good.
So it kind of helped. I used to play pool tournaments after high school and 9-ball tournaments and things like that. It was the same thing as you had the sandbaggers that would every once in a while would play poorly on purpose to keep their handicap low. So that way, when they go into these big tournaments, they have a better shot at having more wins and winning more money. So, yeah, I'm sure that it's like that in pretty much any type of competition setting.
Now, I guess we'll get back to training. I was just kind of curious about how the match stuff worked. In training classes, you have help out there? It depends on the class size, or
depends on the class size and depends on the class itself.
Okay.
So I have several people that help out. Like, for example, so my business partner, my brother from another mother, Corky, he and I do most of the stuff together as long as our schedules mesh out. If it's a really intricate advanced class, I may not bring on a range safety officer that maybe doesn't have experience in that class or at that level, but they're fine to come out to help monitor a CCW firing line, but maybe not come out for like an advanced carbine or something like that. So we like to have at least, depending on the type of class, one instructor for every 2 to 3 students when we're out on the range.
Okay.
So, and then a lot of times, depending on the type of class it is and the class size, we'll run different strings where, let's say we have a class that we have 12 people signed up for, and it's like an intermediate pistol class. We'll run 6 at a time as opposed to all 12 on the firing line at the same time. So we can have 2 or 3 instructors out there for those. We'll run 6 individuals through drills. Then they'll go to the back seat and we'll bring the next 6 up. And then they'll do a set of drills. So the reason behind that is, one, you have a little bit more control over the firing line. You're able to keep a better eye on what the students are doing. But also, my whole thing is, we're not here to just churn out students. We're not a meat grinder. We're not just here to rubber stamp everybody that comes through. We want to make sure anybody who comes and takes training from us is getting the time, attention, and information that they want and that they need to be able to be good shooters. So if we're stacking classes where you have 20 students and only 1 or 2 instructors, oh, hey, there's no time to ask questions. You just write your questions down. We'll get to those later. Like, no, I want to be able to address students' concerns because, you and I have all sat through classes, whether it be in high school or whatever the case may be, where if you have to write your questions down and then ask them at the end of the day, you're just like, screw this, man. It's been 8-9 hours. I just want to go home. I don't want to sit through another hour of Q&A.
Well, and on top of that too, when you're by doing that, you're shortchanging everybody else in the class that may have had the same question. You know, it might
That's
be
a great
pertinent
point.
information that
Yes.
everybody probably could have benefited from by hearing. So yeah,
Yep.
you should be working through
Because you
that.
get those classes where, or you get those type of students that they're embarrassed. They don't want it because they don't want to look dumb,
Mhm.
especially in a gun class.
Mhm.
You have so many type A personalities that come through that type of training that
Sure.
if you have somebody that's a little bit more timid, they might feel very intimidated by some of the other people in the classroom. And I try to cultivate an environment that supports questions. You know, I always tell in the beginning of class, the only dumb question is the one you don't ask. And I take that back. If you ask me, you know, how to give a giraffe CPR in the middle of class, you know, because
slap your face.
The head is so far away from the body and the heart, and you're trying to do mouth to mouth versus chest compressions. Like, okay, that's a dumb question, right? But when it comes to you know, usage, safety, marksmanship, fundamentals, anything, because there's a likelihood, and I see this a lot, where somebody asks a question, and then you see somebody in class, oh, I was thinking the same thing. They'll like mutter it or something. So it's a good point that you bring that up, because that's why I really, really push for students to ask those questions, because chances are you're not the only one sitting in that room that has that question.
I remember when the very first time, you know, when I got my CCW, and it was a bunch of people, probably 95% of the class was all research. And so it was, you know, me that, I was fairly new to firearms at the time, and I didn't want to look stupid, you know, and so I didn't. I had so many questions, but luckily, you know, with that being said, if you get a quality instructor, they're going to take the time and make the effort to go through those kind of things that you probably would. I mean, you know, when you start getting into the weeds of gun law, you know, and there's so many variables that, you know, those kind of questions could ruin an afternoon quickly, you know. So maybe something like that. I mean, having a rough idea of what you're getting into when you get your CCW makes sense. But yeah, there's probably certain things that you might want to, before, as an instructor, I would assume that before answering, it's like, maybe I should go do some research on that one and see if there's been a case or something like that would make this gun law or question make more sense.
Yeah, and there's, you know, unfortunately, we see it a lot where, you know, as a CCW instructor, you've been signed off by the Nevada Chiefs and Sheriffs Association to be an instructor, and you have to provide that association a packet. Here's my certifications. Here's my curriculum. Here's my PowerPoint. Here's my handouts. You have to present all that, and then they vote on whether or not you're going to be approved as an instructor.
Oh, really?
So it's a process to be a CCW instructor in Nevada. And the thing I see a lot of instructors do, and it's unfortunate, is if they don't know an answer because they don't want to look like they don't know something in front of class, they'll just kind of wing it or kind of BS an answer. And that's the worst thing you can do. You know, if I'm approached by a student and they ask me something, and it's been a few years, because again, after doing this for as long as I have, a lot of the questions I've been asked, I've gone and researched, and now over the years, okay, I have that answer already like in the pipe, ready to go. Like last month, somebody hit me with something out of nowhere that I was actually shocked that nobody had asked that before. And I was more shocked that I had no idea.
Really?
On the answer. I go, tell you what, like, write that on a piece. You know, I give everybody, they get their booklet and they get a notepad and a pen. We hand out to everybody. I'm like, write that down for me and then write your email on that sheet, because I need to go look this up and I want to get you the right answer. And then after class, once everybody's gone, I sit down, get on my laptop, and I start researching and looking for good, viable sources, vetted sources that can answer that question. Okay, now I have an answer to that. Now going forward, if somebody asks me that question, boom, I have the answer. And another thing, like we were taught this in certain leadership courses and stuff in the military, is like, don't ever say you don't know. Just, if you don't know, just say, you know what? I don't have that information for you right now, but I will get it for you. And so go ahead and write that down for me. And then this evening or at some point tomorrow, I will send you an email with an answer to that question. Don't just say you don't know.
Right.
You know, if you don't know, you don't know. You got to be able to admit that you don't know, but there's tactful ways to do it to where, you know, I don't know.
Yeah. Better than giving wrong advice and then having somebody go into a situation they thought they were covered on.
Right.
You know, covered by, and they're not, you know.
Yep.
And this is an industry that is not very forgiving in that sense.
No. And it started out as a running joke, and it kind of became a thing where um, there's a couple portions in the class where the term Jeff says, there's actually one of the guys started a hashtag thing, like whenever he posted anything about class, he would put hashtag Jeff says. And it was a scenario thing. I'm like, okay, well, instructor Jeff says this, but father of 2 children Jeff says this. Mm-hmm. And then I would say, they're the only absolute is that there are no absolutes, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. But so a lot of times we're giving examples. I'll say, okay, 99% of the time you're covered if this. 99% of the time you're covered if this. And I say, why 99% of the time? Because it's never all the time. Mm-hmm. You could get a judge who's doing what they now call advocacy from the bench, as opposed to making a judgment based on rule of law. They're making a judgment based on emotion or feeling. Mm-hmm. So those are things that have to be taken into consideration if you find yourself in a courtroom. So I tell them, 90 or 99% of the time you're covered under this. And the reason I don't say 100% of the time is because I don't want you sitting on that stand going, well, Jeff said if I did this, then blah, blah, blah. Right. So it started out as a joke, and, it's just kind of gone into, it's grown from there, but it's never 100%. With any, even, well, the law, NRS 202350 states, blah, blah, blah. It does, but depending your prosecutor's interpretation of that NRS and the defendant's interpretation of that NRS is going to be 2 completely different things, because they're going to interpret it to the way it's going to benefit their client.
Yes. Yeah. And you look at that. Speaking of NRSs, when we have the essential, and this is kind of off topic, but the street legal side-by-side type thing, you got the 5 mile law, right? And when that first came out, when that first passed, it was amazing to see. It was basically who was stopping you, where they were stopping you at. And it was, I personally have never had any problems with being on the street, in mine, but a lot of buddies of mine have definitely been harassed, and it's all left up to interpretation. Yeah. And I think that's, a good point that you're making. Some of the scenarios that the USCCA, I think that they pose on Instagram, it's like stuff that I would never think about, but real life situations that have happened where you get into the courtroom and everything you thought you knew, all the ideas of owning a firearm go completely out the window based on who you're presenting it to.
Yep.
So yeah, it's as an instructor, I would expect them to be doing their homework, but also, like you're saying, have the best answer that they can give at the time. Yes. And if not, hopefully not share some bad.
Don't BS something, and don't what we call fake the funk. Mm-hmm. Don't try to just word vomit your way through it to make it sound like you know what you're talking about, because somebody could end up in jail. Somebody can something can end up very badly from you passing on bad information. Mm-hmm. So I try to be as knowledgeable and forthcoming with that as I can. And if it's something I don't know, I will tell you, like, hey, that I'm not sure about that. Let me research that for you, and I'll let you know. Mm-hmm.
So as a student, I think once you get that card, you get your CCW, and it's like there's this false sense of security. It's like you're covered. Now that I have this card, I can take this wherever I want. I don't have to. There's a lot of times where that's not the case, and and going into the before, this is obviously before going to the class, your expectations of what a CCW actually is or what it covers is a lot different than what you're actually getting when you get done with the class.
Right. And I get people that'll come in for a renewal. And so in the state of Nevada, for renewals, you only have to go through the laws and requal on the range. You don't have to go through the written test again. So you don't have to sit through the whole class. So for the state of Nevada, it's a 4-hour minimum requalification course. I've had people that come to my requalification course, and it's like their third one. Right? Maybe they did their initial, they requalified 5 years ago, and this is like their second requal. So it's their third time sitting in a classroom, and I'll point things out, and it's like deer in headlights. Mm-hmm. Like, well, I didn't know that. Like, what do you mean you didn't know that? Your previous instructors didn't cover this with you? No. When I got my USCCA certification, we're sitting in a classroom with instructors from 3 other companies up in Reno, and there's a point where we do teachbacks. Right. So it's like, okay, take a portion of the pre-existing CCW course that you're already teaching and teach it back to the class right now. And I brought up something. I brought up a term, and the entire class, it was deer in headlights. There's only 2 people in the back of the classroom that were smiling. Both of them had gone through my class previously and were getting their certifications to be instructors. And they're like, yeah, I know what that is because I went through his CCW class. So I'm familiar with AOJP analysis. And the other students' class were like, well, that's force continuum. I said, no, it's not force continuum. Force continuum is something completely different than AOJP. And so when I brought it up, I go, are any of you teaching AOJP? And they're like, no. Is it mandated? No, it's mandated that you go through force continuum, but force continuum is designed for law enforcement because it talks about tasers and pepper spray and control holds and restraints and all these other things that, we say restraints, a lot of people for handcuffs, flex cuffs, things like that. Do all of us have that bat belt that law enforcement wears on a daily basis when they go out and do their job? No, we don't. So there's a lot of aspects of force continuum that isn't covered for civilians. But AOJP is like 4 criteria that's got to be present to justify lawful use of a firearm for self-defense. A lot of people don't know what that is or don't talk about it. So when I brought it up, and I'm looking at 8, looking at the faces of 8 other instructors, and they're looking at me like, what are you talking about? And it was kind of eye-opening because when you're an instructor, every good instructor should at least go get training from another instructor at some point. You're never a master. You're always a student. Anybody who says I'm a master at this, they're not. You should always seek improvement. You should always try to better yourself. If anything, maybe that instructor either A, has new information for you that maybe you didn't know before. Like, oh, hey, that's a really good point. Or B, like, oh man, I'm glad I don't teach XYZ the way this guy's teaching, because man, the way he whether it's all the instructors out there, man, we're not doing anything new. We're not doing we're regurgitating something that we learned from somebody else at some point in time in a manner that our students can digest it. And it's how you present. I know guys that are some of the best shooters I've ever seen. They know the laws inside and out. They're phenomenal. But when they get in front of a classroom, they just can't transfer that knowledge. Some people that are wordsmiths that can sit in front of a classroom all day long, but when you get out to the range, they couldn't hit water if they fell out of a boat. So you gotta have that balance. So it's good to get out there and train with people and reputable people. I tell all my students, regardless of what class they come through, especially on CCWs, go get follow-on training. The CCW is the bare minimum. Like you mentioned, that you get that card, you think that's your get out of jail free card. That's carte blanche, that you can do whatever you want. And that's absolutely not the case. That is the bare minimum that you need to be doing. And what I tell these students is go get that follow-on training, whether it's with us, which is of course what we prefer, or if you're going to another instructor, vet that instructor. You're paying your hard-earned money to somebody else to teach you life-saving skills. Go look at their background. Ask who they've trained with. Ask about what certifications they may hold, what real-life experience they have, things like that. Because if it's just some dude who went through, I learned a bunch of stuff off of YouTube and I decided I'm going to go teach, or like, well, I was in the Army for 4 years. I'm going to go teach. Cool. What'd you do in the Army? I was supply. Okay. But what did you do to just not justify, it's not the right word, but what certifies you to teach the information that you're going to be passing along? Well, I was in the Army. Okay, well, that doesn't mean anything.
And that raises a good point. I mean, what, in your opinion, would be, if we're outside of the valley, or even not, I mean, what is a red flag that you would see from an instructor where it would be like, I probably need to get my money back and go somewhere else? What would students want to see?
That's a good question. First and foremost, if your instructor will not shoot in front of you, if your instructor will not demonstrate the information that they're presenting to you, that could be a red flag. Not to say that every instructor should be able to be the best at shooting or whatever. I mean, I have students that outshoot me all the time. But the instructor should be willing to demonstrate the information that they're giving. If they're not willing, or they hide behind whatever, not having to demonstrate it, that could be a red flag. As with anything, do as I say, not as I do. That's another big red flag. Or if a lot of times, man, it's the sniff test. If it doesn't pass the sniff test, chances are, I mean, trust your gut.
Mm.
If it just seems off or doesn't seem right, and they can't give you justification for why it seems off, I'm the kind of person where I have to know the whys. You know, if somebody's teaching me something, hey, we want you to do it this way. Okay, why?
Mm-hmm.
And if I can quantify the why, justify it. Oh yeah, cool. Okay, no problem. If they can't justify the why, well, because I said so, or this is the way I was taught. Well, just because the way it's always been done doesn't mean it's the best way to do it. You know, so those are some of the bigger red flags on, or if they have zero certification. And for, at least in the state of Nevada, if an instructor, and there's two sides to this, and I've heard arguments for both sides. This is just me personally. I'm not speaking as I'm not saying this is expert, but if an instructor is not not certified to teach CCW, right? Because anybody can call themselves an instructor. There's a dude who I witnessed shoot himself in the leg at a match for improperly drawing a firearm that calls himself a defensive firearm instructor. And he has zero certifications. He went to a couple classes. He's done went to a couple matches, watched some stuff on YouTube, and then goes around calling himself a defensive pistol instructor.
Oh, wow.
The dude can't even clear a holster without putting a hole in his leg.
Jeez.
So, like, is that who you want teaching you? Absolutely not. So if that particular instructor has no official certification from anybody, or it's like, well, I'll just go out and shoot with my bros. No.
Mm-hmm.
You know, ask who they've trained with, ask what certifications they have. But another big flag is the CCW thing. And I heard about this recently. I never really considered that. If an instructor is not going to take the time to actually be vetted by the state, you know, maybe that's not what you want to be doing.
Once the state signs off and says you're good to go, is there any sort of process, like any checkup, like follow up on,
you know what,
to make sure you're doing it right?
There's not. And honestly, there should be.
Yeah.
But here's the thing too, is like, I'm sure at some point in time, maybe there was a process in place, where, you know, like, during the Christmas holiday season, stores will have like their secret shoppers that'll go out and see how they're treated, and see if the prices are what they're supposed to be and things like that. There may have been some sort of program at one point in time where the state would do that. And honestly, I think it should. But then you're looking at budget and manpower.
Sure.
You know, the state's struggling as it is. Police departments are struggling as it is. They don't have the resources to be.
Yeah, it seems like it'd almost be like a fun job, you know, just going undercover. That
I do know that if certain instructors are reported numerous times, that they will PILB, or not, excuse me, not PILB. It's completely something different. That sheriff departments will go looking. I've known of at least one instructor in the last several years that had their credentials named. And not from a sheriff's department, it's actually from the NRA. Just the information on one particular topic, and this was in a like an instructor development course. So everybody in the class was instructors. They were all certified instructors. And this individual got in an argument about a piece of information that was completely wrong, to the point where it could get somebody killed. And we all gave the individual numerous times to clarify his stance. Like, you sure this is what you're saying? And it was just, nope, absolutely. I've been teaching for over 20 years.
Yeah, that's scary how many people have gone through that
exactly.
class.
And then so you got to start thinking about that. And then the instructor of that class then contacted the NRA and said, hey, you need to take a look at this guy. But, you know, I know there's instructors out there that, you know, might have a buddy or somebody who needs to do a one-on-one CCW because of scheduling or something. And it's like, oh yeah, meet me at Starbucks. We'll go over the safety rules, go out to the range and shoot and call it a day. Right. So you're doing a disservice to the student, for one. You're taking somebody's money and not teaching them what they need to learn. They're not learning the laws. They're not learning the ins and outs. You're doing your students a disservice. You're doing you a disservice, and you're doing other instructors a disservice because you're giving other instructors a bad name by doing that. So if there was like a secret witness line or something like that, to where like, hey, I took this class and I thought we were supposed to cover XYZ and we did not. I think it would be beneficial for the industry, but of course too, who wants the oversight?
Right. Well, you look at
I don't
look
want,
at like, I mean, Yelp reviews, right? You're just picking up a bunch of people that are probably just disgruntled or weren't necessarily running into problems, but yeah, that would probably be a pretty rough job.
with one thing I've noticed with reviews in general, when somebody has a good experience, they'll give that experience word of mouth, but they're not going to take the time to sit down and type out a positive review for the most part. If somebody has a very bad experience, they have no problem taking as much time as they need to complain everywhere that they can. And so with like Yelp reviews, always take it with a grain of salt. The other thing too is I've known people who had a vendetta against other businesses, and they will create a whole bunch of fake usernames that aren't verified, and they'll go just leave 20 one-star reviews, on a business or something like that, just for personal sake. So that's the hard part with the review process, is everything's with a grain of salt when it comes to reviews.
And you're, I mean, with technology now as it is, I mean, looking at our community forums and stuff like that, I mean, it doesn't take long for somebody to say, a rant or a rave, this person was awesome. And everyone's like, really, I had an excellent experience there. I don't understand what the problem is, but if you get enough people, I think that would take care of the problem pretty quick. You don't need a hotline.
Yeah.
So
on the community forums, it pretty much, that's what's nice about the communities. Like Yelp is so big that, and it's my understanding, I don't know this for a fact, but I believe businesses can go in and delete reviews, because I've known of some businesses that had some pretty bad reviews, and then a week or two later, those reviews are gone. They're back to a 5-star. It's like, well, how did that happen? I don't know if that's a fact or not. Somebody can correct me on that, and I would actually appreciate the correction if somebody knows, because I don't know for sure. But the community forums tend to be, number one, they're monitored. You have admins that go in there, and if it's a user that, we had somebody just review or leave a bad review on this local company, but this dude lives in British Columbia and has never been to this area. It's just somebody throwing, because some people they're trolls. They just want to go out there and stir the pot just for the sake of stirring the pot. So the community forums are nice, because then you also can reach out. Hey, we see that all the time on some of these community forums. Hey, I'm looking for somebody. I need a gutter cleaner, or I'm looking for somebody to like just rake leaves. I'm looking for this or looking for that. People give recommendations, and then people will chime in. Hey, I had a good experience with this, or hey, you know what? I had a bad experience with this. That was me personally. I had a bad experience with a local company, and I put out on the forum, hey, I'm looking to have XYZ done. I'm looking for recommendations, except for this one company, because it's a company a lot of people recommend. So I knew it was going to be so I put it right up front there, just not this company. One of the commenters was the owner of the company. He didn't comment under the company name. He commented on his own and said, oh, why not this company? And then I said, why? Well, then he deleted his comment, which then deleted my response because he didn't like the response that he got. So it's a lot more transparent when you use those community forums. That's what's nice. But the hard part on that is like you get 58 people that ask the same question.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, this was answered yesterday.
Yeah. It's we just went through that on ours here. I made a post about that. And,
oh, that's right. I saw that. Yeah.
It was,
here's the magnifying glass.
Yeah. I mean, I just, I love these forums. I love the opportunities that they bring, and it's, when you do get good service, when you do, find a good product, it's nice that you're able to promote that for this company. And the unfortunate part about that is that we're raising a bunch of extremely codependent neighbors, that are not willing to go do the work themselves. They just want to, somebody to point them in the right direction. Yeah. So it kind of sucks, because I'd like to see these community forums act as, a growth, a vehicle for growth, for these people, like you could really get good at Facebook. You could do some really neat things with it. It's called the internet. Check it out. You're going to love it. But it's unfortunate, because we have some people that are trying to push their friend's business. And that's all they're doing. I don't know if it's good, if they're good or not. It's just my buddy or a friend of a friend or whatever. And so that kind of gets convoluted. But going back to the, Google reviews or Yelp reviews, I mean, you definitely have people that will ruin your reputation really quick. And it's a lot harder, like you're saying, a lot harder to fix. I know at one point you couldn't edit Yelp at all. And
Right.
so I think, but like I said, there was people that were out there just trolling and,
Right.
and ruining businesses,
Yeah.
completely destroying them. So, but, what was I going to say? I guess we can get back on topic. We don't have to talk about Facebook the whole time, So you got classes coming up, this week, tomorrow.
Yeah, I got a CCW scheduled for tomorrow. December, we've got quite a bit. Starting in December, we're back to teaching up in Reno as well.
Okay.
So we had a spot that we were teaching up there previously that the owner of the business decided that he just didn't want to continue his business and close doors. So we were without a landing place up there for a while. We just contracted with another establishment up there. So we'll be teaching CCW up in Reno once again. I believe December 12th is our first class up in Reno.
Nice.
We also have a TACMED class coming up in December. So I'd mentioned, some of the more popular classes. EDC skills is one that we get a lot of traction on, and TACMED is another one that we get quite a bit of traction on. Everybody can at some point make holes, right? Utilizing your ballistic perforation device.
Mm-hmm.
Like everybody can punch holes. Can you plug holes? If you think back to the Las Vegas massacre, how many more lives could have been saved if, say, 20 people had tourniquets in their pocket?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Just 20 tourniquets.
Mm-hmm.
How much of a difference could that make? There's going to be people out there that are like, it wouldn't have made any difference, blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, that may be the case, but I'd rather have a TQ in my pocket and be able to at least save one life, potentially, than not be able to. So the medical class that we put on, it's not myself or my partner teaching. It's actually another individual I know. He's a retired Navy corpsman. He spent a lot of time in Somalia in the early 90s. The man has a lot of real world experience on plugging holes. Mm-hmm. He's active with the Washoe County Search and Rescue. He teaches CPR and first aid at TMCC. He is very, very well versed in emergency medical application. So that's who we have that comes in and instructs that class. It's an 8-hour class, so it is all day. It's very intensive, but it is a combination. It is a first aid, stop the bleed, and CPR/AED.
Mm.
When you leave that class, you are certified in administering CPR. So what I try to emphasize that class to people is like, you don't have to be a shooter to take this class. This is not a gun class. This is, if you're a 16-year-old high school student that wants to start babysitting that needs a CPR cert, this is a great class to take. If you're a small business owner or you work in any type of profession where, warehouse work, something that, somebody can get seriously injured, this is a great class to take. It's not just for the quote, tactically minded people. This is medical training that's real world applicable for anyone in any profession at any time. So the stop the bleed is how to properly utilize tourniquets, how to properly pack a wound. So like the real rudimentary rule of thumb is you tourniquet your limbs, you pack the joints, seal the box. Right. So if you have like a sucking chest wound, those are sealing wound care. So like, taking, ask a lot of people, how to treat a sucking chest wound. Well, no, okay, take a Ziploc bag or any type of plastic, 2 pieces, one in the front, one in the back, pressure on both, wrap it. That's sealing that. You don't want blood to leak out. Mm-hmm. So that's, tourniquet your limbs. And there used to be like when you want to apply the tourniquet close to the wound, that was old thought process. The old thought process was if you tourniquet a limb, they're going to lose the limb. That's not the case. There's been so much more science that's come out in the world of first aid that things that people thought were not good are good, and things that people thought were good are no longer good. Mm. So, it's a tremendous opportunity. The instructor that we utilize, we have, if you look behind you, you still see some remnant feints of fake blood on the carpet. Oh, yeah. So we have, he has the squirter. So if when you're applying a tourniquet high up on the leg and there's arterial spray or something along those lines, we mimic that with fake blood and squirters and things like that. Same thing with when you're packing a wound with gauze. There'll be blood coming up through the wound as you're packing it. And so it's very intensive hands-on first aid training. It's a tremendous class. It runs about $120.
And is it available on your website, or how do we sign up for it? Okay.
Yeah. So any of the classes that we provide, and I will be very transparent, say that I'm not always the best at updating the website with the classes when they're coming up. Trying to get better at that and making sure that we have like 2 to 3 months out. We try to put it quarterly. Currently on the website, which is odmdefense.com, we have all of our classes for the rest of November and into December. Those are all listed on the website. We may add some more for December depending on what comes up, but we also know that it's the holiday season and it's very difficult for people to be able to have discretionary funds to be able to go out and take training. A lot of people tend to emphasize and focus on that after the first of the year. Mm-hmm. So, but we are going to have those classes, and the only class that we have a bare minimum on and that we have to have in order to facilitate the class is the medical training. Okay. We need to have a minimum 4. We cap that class at 10.
Okay, I was going to ask.
So yeah, we cap it at 10, and it is an 8-hour. It is an intensive. It's an intensive day. Most of the other classes, like our CCWs for here in Minden, we cap at 12. I believe our Reno classes, I think we're capping at 20, just because we have a larger room, larger space. Mm-hmm. So for the classes that we do offer, we do have limited space available. So it's always, best to sign up as soon as you can. Again, that website is www.odmdefense.com.
We'll link it in the bio.
Okay.
Here. Yeah.
Awesome. Yep. So yeah, we're putting all those out there. I want to say we're off the top of my head, it's either an EDC skills or a pistol carbine combination class. I think we also have scheduled in December, which we call that our tactical advantage class. It's essentially a compressed intermediate pistol and an intermediate rifle class, kind of combined into one.
That's fun.
So what that does is we spend the morning working on pistol, middle of the day working on carbine, and in the end of the day, it's entirely scenario-based training. So what we do is we set up a course of fire, and everybody runs it one at a time. It's like, okay, here's the scenario. This is what's going on. Respond as if it's real life, and have them run through that. There's threats and non-threats. We make you download your rifle, so it forces you to transition to pistol halfway through, and then you have to demonstrate a proper transition back with a reload, things like that. So wow. It's a lot of moving parts. It's a lot of focus involved and a lot of skill necessary for that. So, but that is a popular class because, again, when you're talking about class prices, ammo, stuff like that, a combination class like that, you're using less pistol ammo and less rifle ammo than if you did an all-day pistol, all-day rifle. So, and you're getting a little bit of each instead of having to pay the money, go through the ammo, and the time of taking 2 separate days to have 2 completely separate courses. It's a condensed version. The downside is because it's condensed, there's certain aspects that you miss out on from taking the full class. Wow. Little intricate things and some information and things like that we really get in the weeds about on an all-day class as opposed to the compressed class. The compressed class it focuses more on just actual manipulation and putting the tools to work as opposed to discussing theory and process and things like that. So a lot less discussion time and more of just hands-on
getting the work
running and gunning.
Yeah. Cool. And so outside of the training section, where we're going to go to find your holsters?
A website is www.odmdefense.com. We don't have the entire product line up there yet, but for your basic inside and outside the waistband and mag carriers, those are on there. You can select your color, what hand, your belt width, all the options for what you would need for your holster selection are going to be on the website.
Okay.
If there's any special instructions, if there's like, hey, just whatever the case may be, if it's a one-off type of thing or you prefer, I don't want a sweat guard or whatever, there's a comment section that you can put that on there as well.
And all the training calendar is going to be up there as well?
Training calendar is up there through December. Okay. We don't have our Q1 for 2024 up there yet. We're working on that right now. If there's something that you're looking for training wise that you don't see on the calendar, you can always send us an email, info@odmdefense.com. And it could be something either we can add to the calendar, or we could just do a private class for you. And again, that's no additional charge for doing private classes.
Perfect. And how about your social media? Where can we find you there?
Social media, we have Instagram and we have Facebook. Both of those are going to be at ODM Defense. That'll be where you find us on social media.
Wonderful. Anything else before we sign off?
Just one more thing as far as the name ODM Defense. We get asked about that a lot, what ODM stands for. ODM stands for Odorint Doom Metuan, which is Latin for let them hate so long as they fear.
In the Blue Ridge Hills in Kentucky,